What does grace mean to you?
Grace is knowing that I don't have to hold on to the things that make me afraid. I've been wrestling with this idea of what it means for something to be sufficient lately, and is it sufficient for me to go to the gym 3 times a week instead of every day? Is it sufficient for me to just try to eat less as opposed to eating actual healthier foods? Right? And I feel like for me, this question of is something sufficient is really rooted in the idea of trying to set a bar as low as possible so that I can know what I have to do to get over it. That's what being sufficient means to me. But in our reading from 2 Corinthians, Paul talks about this thorn that's been in his side, this illness, this affliction that he's had. And every time he's asked God to take it away, the response that Paul has gotten is, "My grace is sufficient." God telling Paul, my grace is sufficient for you. And here it seems like God is really flipping the script, that when I try to make sufficiency about a bar that I can get over, God makes sufficiency about raising the bar. God says there is no affliction, there is no challenge, there is no struggle or illness that my grace is not sufficient for. So imagine the highest bar you can set, and God says my grace is sufficient for that. And if that's what it means, that grace is sufficient for us, then we are freed to let go of all those things that make us afraid, all those things that put terror in our hearts, right? We can let go of fear of illness. We can let go of fear of money problems or of marital strife. All those things are gone because God's grace is sufficient. And so perhaps what I have to let go of most fully for myself is this idea that I can protect the ones that I love, right? Because I love my daughter and I would do anything to protect her, but if God's grace is sufficient, I can't live in that fear. I have to be willing to let go of this fear to trust that God is going to care for her when I cannot. If someone goes into her school with a weapon, God is going to care for her when I cannot. If she gets in an accident, if she gets an illness, whatever might happen to her, God's grace is going to be sufficient for her. And so grace to me is knowing that while I would do anything to protect her and to love her with all of my being, grace is knowing that even when I can't do those things, God has it in control. That God's grace is going to be sufficient. And it's a struggle. And it's a reminder that I need every day. But fortunately, even when I forget, even when I choose to hold on to fear, there's grace for that too.